Keep in mind this list will contain spoilers for the manga. So bounties in One Piece are not entirely random. There is thought into why certain characters get certain numbers, and what that establishes about their place in the setting. So I've created 9 tiers of bounties to help understand why certain prices are handed out. Now keep in mind that due to the nature of bounties being loose and interpretive, not to mention the ones that are just straight up jokes, that not everyone is going to fit perfectly into certain tiers. But I did my best to determine the most accurate placements for most characters. Starting at the bottom, we have the Nobodies under 10 million. Now here's the thing, if you have a bounty of under 10 million, your bounty is fake. The world government could not care less about you. You are not a real criminal, you are just a local asshole in a fishing boat. This is where people like Mountain Bandits and Elvita come in, just absolute scrubs who pick on the weak and don't go far away from small villages and islands. At tier 2 we have true criminals. These are people with bounties over the 10 million mark. As for how high that tier goes is up to interpretation, but it doesn't go too close to 100 million. These are the people the government actually think are threats to civilians. Many of these pirates attack villages and often go after small territories. But it's the basic starting line of being a quote-unquote real criminal. For example, Luffy was given a 30 million berry bounty just before entering the Grand Line, because symbolically, this is the first moment of Luffy being recognized as a true pirate. Now at the time that was considered an impressive bounty, but in hindsight that's only really true for the East Blue. 30 million is quite literally nothing in the grand scheme of things. We can also reference the bounties of Luffy's crew after Enies Lobby, as most of them were around that range, especially since Enies Lobby was all about the crew evolving from a group of friends playing pirates to a true pirate crew. Moving to tier 3, we have bounties over 100 million, typically peaking at around the 300 million range. This tier is called the Paradise Pirate tier. It's the price often given to those who have survived and thrived in the first half of the Grand Line. Now all the supernovas have bounties over 100 million, which marked them as super rookies. Basically, these people were strong enough to make it to the finish line of Paradise, representing pirates who have real potential. Before we move on to tier 4, I want to talk about 0.5 bounties. 0.5 bounties would be bounties like Robin at the beginning of the story. Not quite 100 million, but still above the average East Blue scrub. Like I said before, bounties are loose and interpretive. The reason I don't give 0.5 bounties their own tier is because they don't have enough distinction for one. So if characters don't make it into certain tiers, you could put them in a 0.5 tier, a pseudo version of whatever they seem closer to, but you could just put them in either, it doesn't really matter. Moving up to tier 4, we have the New World Pirates. These are pirates around 300 to 400 million, peaking at around 500 million. Similar to the tier below, this is for pirates who have proven they can survive and thrive in the New World. If we look at the bounties of the Supernova after the time skip, we can see that almost every single one was given a bounty over 300 million, establishing a baseline for pirates in this half of the Grand Line. Now I know that Luffy had a 400 million berry bounty before entering the New World, but like I said, this tier system isn't perfect. Plus, Luffy didn't actually consider himself a New World level pirate yet. Luffy's 500 million after defeating Doflamingo acts as a better representation of this idea, as Doflamingo is the first real challenge for Luffy in the New World. Plus, his entire crew are given more impressive bounties, which make most of them super rookie to pseudo super rookie level pirates. And if you compare them to the frozen bounties of Doflamingo's crew, which is almost 100 million for top officers, it does make Luffy look like a far more legitimate New World level pirate. Moving on to tier 5, we have the Yonko Subordinate level pirate. This tier is super frustrating to accurately pin down, but it seems to be around the 500 to 900 million range. I will acknowledge that many Yonko officers do not have this high a bounty, but there is a lot of crossover between New World pirates and Yonko subordinates. That being said, I decided to average it up to 500 to make things less confusing. Most of these characters do tend to operate as top officers in Yonko crews. They are clearly above the average New World pirates and act as mini-bosses to test whether New World pirates have what it takes to climb the ladder. Basically, they are the wall that separate the truly exceptional from the fodder. Moving to tier 6, things get much easier to pin down. At typically 1 billion, this is the true Yonko commander level bounty. Now obviously not every commander has this high a bounty, plus Luffy had this high a bounty when he was considered the 5th emperor, but it is the bounty we most often associate with Yonko commander level pirates. This bounty tends to speak for itself. You are an elite pirate in the New World and often the most powerful subordinate of any Yonko you serve. This is best reflected in the Straw Hat bounties after Wano, where Zoro, Sanji, and Jinbei all receive bounties over 1 billion. This is the point in the story where Luffy has proven himself as a true Yonko, with Zoro and Sanji also proving themselves as capable Yonko commanders, with Luffy now having 3 major officers just like every other Yonko crew. Plus, the rest of the crew have now attained true New World level bounties that frame them as far more appropriate Yonko level crew members. Moving on to tier 7, we have the Admiral level. This is the 3 billion berry bounty established by Cross Guild. As we have obviously seen throughout the story, Admirals tend to be stronger than Yonko commanders. Now while Luffy's bounty is also 3 billion, keep in mind that he did beat Kaido, so we all know his current bounty isn't accurate. This bounty does make the most sense as an Admiral tier, as the world government have proven themselves to be stronger than any individual Yonko crew, so naturally the top officers should be more impressive than Yonko commanders. These are the bounties I imagine Zoro, Sanji, and Jinbei will have by the end of the story, as Luffy should surpass the world government. Moving on to tier 8, we have the Yonko level pirate. This is reserved for bounties of 4 billion. Now obviously not all Yonkos have this bounty, but it is the most common bounty given to these characters. Plus, since they are the 4 emperors, it makes sense that it's a number most associated with them. The Yonko title really speaks for itself. These emperors rule massive empires with thousands of pirates under their flag, often having mastered all 3 levels of Haki, especially Conqueror's Haki, which splits the sky, which is their signature feat of strength. Now, while characters like Luffy, Blackbeard, and Mihawk probably do deserve 4 billion berry bounties, Blackbeard and Mihawk at least have reasons as to why they may be closer to pseudo-level emperors instead. Starting with Blackbeard, who almost does have a 4 billion berry bounty, Blackbeard has simply never had the courage to face any of the other emperors in a fair fight. And if you compare him to Shanks, who literally one-shot Kid and his entire crew, Blackbeard defeating Law and his crew with help is a lot less impressive. So it's likely that Blackbeard still needs one more Devil Fruit before he's considered a true emperor, and is probably the least impressive Yonko at the moment. As for Mihawk, while he is considered to be on Shanks' level, he isn't interested in being a captain and certainly doesn't have a powerful, loyal crew like Shanks does. So while he is Yonko level in strength, he doesn't meet all the major criteria. Luffy definitely does deserve a 4 billion berry bounty, but Oda is probably saving it for later. As for Buggy, I don't really feel like I should have to explain why Buggy doesn't deserve a 4 billion berry bounty. And finally, we have tier 9, the Pirate King level tier of 5 billion. There are only 3 characters in this tier so far, being Roger, Whitebeard, and Akainu. This is the highest bounty that can be given to any character. Roger obviously makes sense as the king of the pirates, so he acts as the baseline for this tier. Whitebeard was considered his equal in strength, and could become king if he wanted to, he just didn't want to. As for Akainu, he is supposed to be a post-Kaido level boss, so it makes sense for him to have a bounty similar to that of a Pirate King level character. Besides, he is Fleet Admiral now, so it would be pretty sad if after 2 years he still couldn't face a Yonko. And that brings us to the end of this tier list. Obviously the system isn't perfect, it was never going to be given the nature of bounties, but I believe it highlights some recurring themes that shed light on how Oda might think of bounties for his characters. Either way, I hope you enjoyed this video, and I will see you in the next one.